Hey guys, this is Aaron from RF Digital. Today I'm going to show you how to use the SD card shield to read and write a file from your SD card. We're also going to incorporate Simblee for mobile. I have with me the Simblee Development Kit number RFD 77803, my mobile device, and my laptop. Let's get started. For this example, we'll use the USB shield, 7-pin GPIO breakout board, and the SD card shield. Let's look at the code. We need to include the right header files. We'll include the SPI header file, the SD header file, and of course Simblee for mobile. The first variable we'll define is our chip select pin. The Simblee SD card shield uses the 6th GPIO. Our next two variables are button and button 2. These are for Simblee for mobile. We'll store our object IDs here. Our third variable is button down. I'll explain this variable later on. Our fifth variable is read file. This is going to tell us whether or not we're going to read the file at the next loop. Our final variable is data. This will be a reference to the open file on the SD card. Let's move on to the setup function. As always, let's initialize the serial console. We'll set a few parameters of Simblee for mobile and then use the Simblee for mobile.begin call. We're going to begin initializing the SD card, so let's print that to the console. This call here starts our SD functionality. We pass it our chip select pin. If for some reason our SD card doesn't work, then it'll print could not initialize card to the console. Now we get to the fun part. If the file we're looking for already exists, then we're just going to remove it. Let's open that file again to write to. Now that we've removed any old files, let's open up a new file. Here we write a couple lines of data to that file and then close it. We only want the file open if Simblee for mobile is connected. So let's scroll down to the Simblee for mobile _onConnect function. You'll see that I set the button down variable to 0, and then I open the file. If the file is opened successfully, we use data.seek to go to the end of the file. We'll print ourselves a blank line and then a line stating capturing Simblee for mobile events. Just in case we disconnect, we're going to close our file, so add the Simblee for mobile _onDisconnect function. Let's scroll up to the UI function. As always, everything is between Simblee for mobile begin screen and Simblee for mobile end screen. We're going to draw our first button. This button will read press me. When we press this button in the Simblee for mobile UI, it's going to keep track of when we press this button. Pressing this button in the Simblee for mobile UI stores the current runtime in milliseconds in the button down variable. Draw your second button and label it read file. When we press this button in the Simblee for mobile UI, it will print the data file to the serial console. Use Simblee for mobile.setEvents for both buttons. Make sure your first button is set up to catch press and release events. Let's go to the UI_event function. Let's check for events from our first button. When we catch a press event, we want to store the current runtime in milliseconds in the button down variable. We're also going to print that to our SD card file. When we catch a release event, we're going to store the current runtime in milliseconds in a temporary variable. Next, we're going to print that value to the SD card file. We also want to know how long that button was pressed, so we're going to subtract the start time from the end time and print that to the data file. Just for kicks, we'll also print the current temperature in Fahrenheit. As I mentioned earlier, if we catch a press event from button 2, we're going to set the read file variable to 1, which will read the SD card file on the next loop. Speaking of loop, let's scroll up to that function. First, we'll check if our read file variable is set. If so, we're going to call the readSDFile function and set read file back to 0. As always, we'll use Simblee for mobile.process to process any Simblee for mobile events. Let's look at the readSDFile function. It's pretty simple. If our data file is available, then we're going to seek to the beginning of that file. This while loop checks if there's any data available to be read and writes it to the serial console. In case we're going to write any more data, we seek then to the end of that file to append. Compile and upload your sketch and open both the serial monitor and your Simblee for mobile app. You should see initializing SD card, card initialized print to the serial monitor. Now select your Simblee device. The UI should appear with two buttons, press me and read file. Go ahead and press and hold down on the press me button. Wait for a minute, then release. Do that same thing one more time. Now press the Read File button. You should see the contents of the SD card file printed to the serial console. You'll notice there are two separate button press events. Hey guys, this is Aaron from RF Digital. We love hearing from everyone out there working with Simblee. If you have an idea or an awesome project you're working on using Simblee, let us know. We may be able to use it in a feature video on our website. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time. You can find more documentation at simblee.com.